On a Thursday afternoon in July of 1975, Ray Hollister was underneath a John Deere 4020, draining the oil when the service manager's shoes appeared beside his creeper. "Hollister, my office, now." Dale Vincent didn't wait for a response. He never waited for anyone. Ray slid out, wiped his hands, and followed Dale to the glass-walled office at the back of the service bay. Dale closed the door, unusual. Most conversations happened with the door open. Then he told Ray to close the blinds. Now Ray knew something was wrong. Dale sat behind his desk, straightened papers that didn't need straightening, and spoke in the voice of a man who had already decided everything. "That 4020 you're working on, the Pearson trade-in. What about it?" "Walter Pearson is trading it in on a new 4440. We agreed on $8,000 for the trade-in. Everybody's happy." Dale leaned forward. "But that tractor is cherry. Pearson maintained it like it was made of gold. We could resell it for 12, maybe 13,000. So you're making good money." "We could make better money if the tractor was worth less when it came in." Dale's expression didn't change. "Drain the oil. Run it 10-15 minutes. Engine seizes. We call Pearson, tell him the tractor came in damaged, something he didn't disclose. Knock 3,000 off his trade-in value. He can't prove anything. He already signed the paperwork." The service bay went quiet. Ray could hear his own breathing, a radio playing country music somewhere, the tick of a clock. "You want me to sabotage a farmer's tractor," Ray said. "A tractor he maintained perfectly, so you can cheat him out of $3,000. I want you to do what's good for the dealership. That's your job." "My job is to fix tractors, not destroy them." Dale's face hardened. "Your job is what I say it is. I give orders, you follow them, that's how it works." Ray stood very still, 26 years old, 3 years at this dealership. The best job he'd ever had, all of it in Dale Vincent's hands. "No," Ray said. "Excuse me. I'm not going to sabotage that tractor. Walter Pearson is a good man. He's been a customer here 15 years. I'm not going to destroy his engine so you can pocket $3,000. Dale's face went red. "Then you're fired. Get your tools and get out, and don't expect a reference. By the end of the week, every dealership in the state will know what kind of employee you were." Ray nodded slowly. "What kind was that?" "The kind who doesn't know how to follow orders." Dale smiled, the ugliest smile Ray had ever seen. "Good luck finding another job, Hollister. Word travels fast in this industry." Ray walked out, collected his toolbox, left without looking back. Behind him, the 4020 sat in the service bay, engine intact, oil undrained. He'd saved the tractor, he'd cost himself everything else. Now let me tell you about Ray Hollister, because you need to understand him before you can understand what he did next. Ray was born in 1949 in Reynolds, Nebraska. His father had been a mechanic at the local co-op for 40 years, fixing tractors, combines, anything farmers brought in. Ray had grown up in that shop, learning to turn a wrench before he learned to ride a bicycle. His father used to say, "There are two kinds of mechanics, the kind who fix things and the kind who make things look fixed. The second kind makes more money in the short run. The first kind sleeps better at night." Ray had always been the first kind. He took pride not just in getting things done, but in getting them done right. When a farmer brought in a sick engine, Ray didn't treat symptoms, he found the cause, and he charged fair prices for honest work. That reputation had gotten him hired at Henderson Farm Equipment, the biggest dealership in southeast Nebraska. Working there was considered a step up. But Henderson's had changed. The original owner had retired in 1973. New investors from Omaha brought in people like Dale Vincent, men who cared more about margins than machines. Ray had watched corners get cut, parts replaced unnecessarily, billing stretched past what was honest. Little corruptions, each one small enough to justify. The 4020 was just the latest, and the worst. Now let me tell you about the next 6 months, because those were the hardest months of Ray's life. Dale made good on his threat. By the end of the first week, every equipment dealership in southeast Nebraska had heard that Ray Hollister was trouble. The story Dale told wasn't quite a lie. He said Ray had been fired for insubordination, for refusing to follow orders, but it was close enough to a lie to destroy Ray's chances. No dealership would hire him. Co-ops, same story. Independent shops had no room. By October, Ray was doing odd jobs, fixing cars at a gas station, helping a neighbor replace a roof, anything that paid cash. His savings were running out. His apartment was getting harder to afford. The worst part was the doubt. Maybe Dale had been right. Maybe that's just how business worked. Maybe being honest was just another word for being stupid. Then in November, someone knocked on his door. Now let me tell you about the letter, because this is where everything turns. Ray opened the door to find a young man in work clothes holding an envelope. "You Ray Hollister, I'm Jim Pearson, Walter Pearson's son." Ray recognized the name immediately, the farmer, the 4020. "My dad found out what happened at Henderson's, what they tried to make you do and what you did instead." Jim's voice was quiet but firm. "He's been trading with Henderson's for 15 years. That's over now. He's taking his business to the co-op in Hebron, and he's told everyone he knows what kind of operation Dale Vincent is running." "How did he find out?" "One of the other mechanics, kid named Tommy Reese. He was in the bay when you got fired. He heard everything. He told my dad." Tommy Reese. Ray barely knew him. A quiet kid, barely 20, who'd started a few months before the firing. Ray hadn't expected anyone to speak up, certainly not someone who had their own job to protect. Jim held out the envelope. "Open it." Inside, a check for $500 and a handwritten note. "Mr. Hollister, I heard what you did for me, what you gave up. This doesn't make up for it, but I hope it helps. If you ever need work, come see me. I can't offer you much, but I can offer you honest work with honest people. Walter Pearson." $500, more than a month's wages, from a farmer who owed Ray nothing except a debt of integrity. Ray looked at Jim, not trusting himself to speak. "My dad's not the only one," Jim said. "There are other farmers who have had bad experiences with Henderson's. People who got overcharged, sold parts they didn't need, treated like idiots. Dale Vincent has made a lot of enemies. He just didn't know it." Ray looked at the check, then out the window at the Nebraska evening sky. Something was beginning. He didn't know what yet, but something was definitely beginning. In February of 1976, Ray rented a small 2-bay garage on the outskirts of Fairbury. Leaky roof, heating that barely worked. He painted the sign himself. HOLLISTER repair, honest work, fair PRICES. Walter Pearson was his first customer, an old Ford 8N with a bad clutch. Ray fixed it for half what Henderson's would have charged, fixed it right. Walter told his neighbors told theirs. By spring, Ray had more work than he could handle alone. By summer, he'd hired Eddie Cruz, a young mechanic fired from another shop for asking too many questions about billing practices. Hungry, talented, committed to honest work. By the end of 1976, Hollister Repair had a reputation. Not a big one, but solid. And every customer Ray gained was a customer Henderson's lost. Dale noticed. Henderson's service revenue had dropped 15%. He started telling people Ray was a fraud, a bad mechanic, fired for incompetence. The lies might have worked, except that they were lies, and Ray's actual work proved it. Every tractor that ran better after Ray touched it was a rebuttal to everything Dale said. Now let me tell you about the opportunity, because this is what changed everything. In 1980, the farm crisis hit Nebraska. Interest rates spiked. Commodity prices crashed. Farmers weren't buying new tractors, they were repairing old ones, nursing them along, trying to survive. New equipment sales at Henderson's dropped 60%. The investors from Omaha started cutting costs. In 1981, they decided to sell. The asking price, $400,000, a fraction of what it had been worth 5 years earlier. Still a fortune. Ray didn't have a fortune, but he had 5 years of savings, a growing business, and something the investors didn't know about: relationships. He went to First National Bank of Fairbury. The loan officer was skeptical. $300,000 was a huge sum for a small business owner. But Ray had brought something with him. Letters, dozens of them, signed statements from farmers across the region, promising to bring their service business to Ray if he bought the dealership, promising to consider him first when they were ready to buy equipment again, promising their loyalty. "These aren't contracts," the loan officer said, leafing through the stack. "These are just promises." "That's right," Ray said. "But around here, a farmer's promise means something. Every one of those men shook my hand. They'll do what they said." The loan officer looked at the letters, then at Ray. "You're the one who got fired from Henderson's, aren't you? Back in '75. Ray felt his stomach tight. Here it came, Dale's version. "Yes, sir. I got fired for refusing to sabotage a trade-in tractor. The service manager wanted me to drain the oil, seize the engine, make it look like the farmer had brought it in damaged, cheat him out of $3,000 on his trade-in." He met the loan officer's eyes. "I said no. They fired me. I've been building my own business ever since." The loan officer was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. "My father-in-law is Walter Pearson. He told me this story years ago, said you were the most honest mechanic he'd ever met." He picked up his pen. "300,000, 20-year term. Let's get the paperwork started." The closing was March 15th, 1982. Ray arrived wearing the same suit he'd worn to his father's funeral. The investors from Omaha sent a lawyer. 2 hours of paperwork. When it was done, Ray Hollister owned the building, the inventory, the John Deere franchise, everything. Henderson Farm Equipment was now Hollister Farm Equipment. The first thing Ray did was drive to the dealership and look at the sign. The second thing he did was walk through the service bay where he'd been fired 7 years earlier. Same concrete floor, same tool stations, same glass-walled office. Dale wasn't there anymore. He'd been let go in 1980 when the investors started cutting costs, replaced by someone cheaper who lasted 6 months. The service department had been hemorrhaging customers ever since. Ray stood in the office, his office now, and thought about everything that had led here. "Now let me ask you something. If you were Ray, what would you do about Dale Vincent?" Because Dale was still in Fairbury. He'd bounced around auto parts store, trucking company, unemployment. By 1982, he was pumping gas at a Sinclair station on Highway 36, minimum wage. The man who told Ray he had no future in this business. Now the man with no future. You could ignore him. You could walk in, fill your tank, let him see your face. Let him see who won. What would you do? Let me tell you what Ray did. On a Tuesday afternoon in April, Ray pulled his pickup into that Sinclair station. A moment later, Dale walked out of the service bay. He looked older, thinner. The confident swagger replaced by the shuffle of a man who'd had it beaten out of him. He saw Ray. His face went pale. "Hollister." "Dale." Silence, the pump clicking between them. "I heard you bought Henderson's," Dale said. "Guess you did all right." "Guess I did. Guess you're here to gloat." Ray was quiet for a moment. He'd imagined this conversation 100 ways. Anger, cold triumph, magnanimity. What he felt now, looking at Dale's defeated face, was none of those things. He was just tired. "I'm not here to gloat," Ray said. "I'm here to offer you a job." Dale's face went through confusion, suspicion, anger, then something that might have been hope quickly suppressed. Doing what? I'm rebuilding the service department. I need experienced mechanics. You were good once before you went into management. You'd hire me after what I did. What you did got me fired. It didn't stop me from building a career. Ray met his eyes. I'm not making you a manager. You'd be in the service bay turning wrenches working under Eddie Cruz. Same pay as any other mechanic. No special treatment. Dale was silent. Why, he finally asked. After everything, why? Because you were right about one thing. Word travels fast in this industry. Everyone knows what you did and what happened afterward. You've been blacklisted the same way you blacklisted me. The difference is what they're saying about you is true. Dale flinched. But here's the other thing. I've spent years building a business on second chances. Every mechanic I've hired is someone another shop threw away. Eddie Cruz fired for asking too many questions. Marcus Webb fired for telling a customer he was being overcharged. Tommy Reese fired for disloyalty. Ray smiled slightly. The people nobody else wants are sometimes the best people to have. And you think I'm one of those people? I think you made bad choices. I think you were working for bad people and you went along with it because that was easier than standing up. I think you've been paying for those choices ever since. Ray reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. I also think you know more about John Deere equipment than almost anyone in this county, and I think everybody deserves a chance to make things right. He held out the card. Dale looked at it for a long moment, then took it. Why are you really doing this? Ray thought about it. Because my father taught me there are two kinds of mechanics, the kind who fix things and the kind who make things look fixed. I'm trying to be the first kind. That means fixing things, even things that are harder to fix than engines. He paid for his gas and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Dale standing at the pump, staring at the card. Dale showed up Monday morning, sober and ready to work. It was hard on his pride, his hands, his back, but he showed up every day. He didn't cut corners, didn't pad invoices, fixed tractors the right way and kept his head down. By the end of year 1, the other mechanics had started to accept him. By year 2, to respect him. By year 3, Eddie Cruz was asking Ray if Dale could be promoted to senior mechanic. What do you think? Ray asked. I think people can change if they want to badly enough. Eddie paused. I also think you already knew that when you hired him. Ray promoted Dale to senior mechanic, then to service lead. By 1988, Dale Vincent was effectively running the service department, not as a manager, but as the most experienced mechanic on the floor, the one others came to with problems they couldn't solve. He never sabotaged another tractor, never cheated another farmer, never gave an order he wouldn't have followed himself. In 1992, the Fairbury Chamber of Commerce held its annual awards dinner. Ray was receiving Business Leader of the Year. Walter Pearson was in the front row, Eddie Cruz, Tommy Reese. In the back, Dale Vincent in an ill-fitting suit, watching. Ray gave a short speech. Then, just before sitting down, he said something not in his prepared remarks. One more thing. 17 years ago, I was fired from a job for refusing to do something dishonest. At the time, I thought my career was over. I was wrong, it was just beginning. But I didn't build this business alone. I built it with people who believed in second chances. Farmers who gave me work when no one else would. Employees who trusted me. Even people who'd made mistakes and wanted a chance to make them right. He looked toward the back of the room. One of those people is here tonight. He was my boss once. A long time ago, he made choices I disagreed with, and I paid the price for standing up. But later, when his life fell apart, I offered him a job. Not because I'd forgotten what he did, because I believed people could change. Ray looked at Dale directly. Dale Vincent has worked for me for 10 years. He's become one of the best mechanics I've ever known. Not because he changed who he was, but because he changed what he chose to do with who he was. He paused. That's what this award really represents. Not my success, our success. The success of everyone who decided that doing the right thing matters, especially when it's hard. The room was silent. Then Walter Pearson stood up and started clapping. Jim Pearson joined him. Then Eddie Cruz. Then the whole room, every person on their feet, applauding not just Ray Hollister but the idea that integrity matters, that second chances work, that people can change if they're willing to do the hard work of changing. In the back of the VFW hall, Dale Vincent sat with tears streaming down his face, clapping harder than anyone in the room. Ray sold the dealership in 2005 to Eddie Cruz. Fair price, generous terms, the name stayed the same. Dale retired 3 years later. He spent his final years doing what he'd always been good at: fixing tractors, getting his hands dirty, earning a reputation he'd once thrown away. He died in 2010, and his obituary mentioned his 23 years at Hollister Farm Equipment without mentioning anything that came before. Ray spoke at the funeral. Dale Vincent made mistakes, so have I, so has everyone in this room. The difference isn't whether you make mistakes, it's what you do after. Dale spent the last 23 years of his life doing good work for fair pay, helping farmers keep their equipment running, earning back a reputation he'd thrown away. That's not nothing. That's everything. Ray Hollister is still alive, 93 years old, living in the same house he bought in 1983. On his wall, a framed check for $500, the one Walter Pearson gave him in November of 1975. It's never been cashed. It never will be. Next to it, a photograph from the 1992 VFW Hall, Ray at the podium, Dale visible in the back clapping. Below the photograph, a small plaque, 3 words: integrity, patience, redemption. The John Deere dealer fired him for refusing one order. 10 years later, Ray Hollister owned the dealership. 10 years after that, the man who fired him was working for him. Not as punishment, as proof.